It's year 20HX. High-level Halo players are hitting their spring jumps with 100% consistency to navigate maps in ways never seen before. On top of that, they're incorporating brand new techniques that most people have never even heard of to push the game to a whole new level. Or at least that's how I imagine the future of competitive Halo could have been if people were playing it and pushing the meta. Unfortunately, that's just not the case at the moment, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot of untapped potential in Halo 5 Guardians. For today's video, I'm going to showcase 3 techniques. Now, these techniques are not completely secret. There are some people who know about them and have known for a while, but these are very widely unknown, and they are almost never used in online play. I have never seen anybody use one of these 3 techniques to gain an advantage online before. So without further ado, let's take a look at what they are. Now, this first technique I've showcased once before in a previous video. I believe the word on the street is that it's called the slide jump kneecap. I don't know. There's not really any documentation for this stuff, so it's kind of just up in the air as far as what the names are. Anyway, the slide jump kneecap is the process of launching your Spartan up the wall with a slide jump to gain a height advantage in a split second. Here's an example of how to use it to get up to ring 2. Check it out. And up immediately. And I'm going to show it in third person as well with the other camera from theater. Flying up the wall, clambering up to get up to ring 2 in just a split second. So how does it work? Because it's not like you can just slide jump at any wall and have it produce the exact same results. You're looking for specific walls. You don't want the wall to be completely flat. Ideally, you want the wall to have a bit of an outward slope to it, some sort of a natural curve, an object maybe jutting out, especially on the bottom portion of the wall, so your Spartan can kick off of it and fly upwards. This rock is a perfect example, and that's what you're aiming for. As you sprint forward, you time your slide right before you make contact with the wall and jump immediately after, and you'll fly up it. Remember to hold crouch to get that higher height on the jump and then clamber at the very top. It's something that you're probably not going to get the first try, and you'll only really understand how it works if you just kind of go at it a couple times and get a feel for it. Now imagine the results that you might get from a technique like this if you use it effectively in high-level Halo. That's instant high ground without even burning your thrust. Take this clip, for example. I'm playing on a Smurf account. Saiyan is on the other team. I'm going to get a double kill, and I'll choke the triple kill, but this is taking advantage of that technique. Now, of course, there are other areas where this technique works as well, and I'll show one more example, but just think about it. There may be plenty of places on different maps that are just completely undiscovered because nobody tries to use this technique. So check this one out. It's E1 up to E2. Pretty crazy. Slide jump into the wall, immediately up to E2, and I'll showcase it once again in third person, just like the last jump. Just crazy jump. E1 to E2, that's a really hard jump to hit with all the mechanics in play, and this isn't even using a thrust. Now, before you get excited to bust this one out in matchmaking, note that it's extremely difficult to do. The last jump isn't so bad. I can hit that one pretty consistently. This jump is brutal. It will take me multiple tries just to hit it once. There's a couple reasons for that. It's a very flat wall. It's a lot more flat than the last example where you have a bit more of a slope to kick off. The kickoff point here, I imagine, is this little lip that's kind of sticking out of the wall. The process is the same. You're sliding right before you hit the wall and jumping. Like the instant before you hit the wall, you're hitting that slide button, and the window is really tight because of how flat this wall is, but there's a second aspect to it that makes it even more difficult, and it's just the shape of the wall itself. I'll show you in one sec in third person. This right here on the very top, I don't know if you guys can see it because I've got my overlay, there's a piece jutting out. This part of the wall juts out of the wall. As you can see, it kind of comes out a little bit, meaning that as you slide jump perfectly into the wall to launch yourself upwards, you have to also tilt backwards on the left stick enough to avoid bumping your head on this little piece and still close enough to the wall to grab the wall with the clamber. So it's very, very difficult. You have to hit it perfectly, tilt backwards, and still hold crouch and clamber and get up there and grab the wall. It's a very challenging jump. But regardless, a pretty cool and very unknown and unused technique in Halo 5, and the first of our secret 3. The second technique, I believe, is called the single-hit Spartan charge. Once again, names are just up in the air, and yes, if you're an advanced mobility hater, you're probably going to roll your eyes on this one, but it's actually very difficult to pull off in a real multiplayer match, and you can't use it in the main competitive playlist because you need the Spartan charge. The single-hit Spartan charge is not one hit. It's 2 hits in quick succession, so quick that it can feel like one hit. It's the process of canceling a mid-air melee into an immediate Spartan charge for an insta-kill. Here's an example on Methbear, who's just going to take it standing still. I'm going to sprint, jump, and melee Spartan charge to take him out, and here it is one more time. It happens very fast. Ba-bam, to take out that player.
Sniper ready. You're on a roll.
So how do you do it? There's a few important steps to getting this down, and if you're not too good with button combos, it might boggle your mind a little bit committing this to muscle memory, but the first step is to sprint, and you want to sprint until you hit full sprint speed, because you need full sprint speed in order to Spartan charge. So step one is to sprint until you hit full sprint speed. You can't really see it because of the quality, but there are indicators that tell you that you hit full sprint speed. There's like outside the screen, there's like lines that indicate that you've hit full sprint speed. You can also hear the fact that you've hit it. Once you hit full sprint speed, you want to jump, and this is where it gets kind of tough. You want to jump and do a standard melee. Of course, if you hit full sprint speed and you're holding forward and you jump and press melee, you will automatically Spartan charge. So in order to avoid Spartan charging, you need to sprint to full sprint speed, jump, and then release the left stick to neutral or tilt back on the left stick so that you don't automatically Spartan charge and you do a regular melee in the air instead. The moment after you do a regular melee, you want to switch weapons and then reactivate sprint in the air and press the melee button again, and you will immediately Spartan charge. Now, you've got some time to do this. I did it pretty instantaneously, but it's actually pretty tough to get down. The first part of it is just jumping and doing a regular melee in the air, either letting your stick return to neutral or tilting back on the left stick so that you do a regular melee, immediately switching weapons to cancel that, reactivating sprint to reinstate your momentum, and then pressing right bumper a second time to charge immediately after. It happens very quick. Just melee, switch weapons, reactivate, and then once again charge. And note that this technique can only be done in the air, making it even more difficult to land, because only in the air can you melee, switch weapons, and still maintain that full sprint speed into an immediate Spartan charge. If you try to melee, switch weapons on the floor, you will have to restart your sprint from the beginning, build up momentum, and then Spartan charge. So what I did is I went on a Smurf account against some new beginner players, and I tried to hit a couple. Check it out. And yes, I understand this is probably the best way to make a new Halo player never want to play this game again. So I'm sorry, but we'll call it a necessary casualty in the Shyway experiment. Also, did you see that second clip? The active frames on the end of the Spartan charge last for a long time, even if it's moving at like a snail's pace. Like, watch, this is such an awkward Spartan charge, and the tail end of it just nicks him, and it's moving so slowly, and it still takes him out. I mean, stuff like this just lets me realize why they took it out of competitive play. But it is satisfying to pull off in the social playlist, and after trying to get it consistent, I realized there's a way to do it that's even easier to pull off and more lethal. It involves the thrust. If you can sprint and jump thrust instead, you can propel yourself forward, and you don't need to worry about tilting back on the left stick to cancel that melee. What I mean is if you sprint, hit full sprint speed, jump thrust, immediately after you jump, you thrust. By thrusting, it's going to stop your ability to immediately Spartan charge afterwards. You will do a regular melee even if you're holding forward on the left stick, so you don't have to worry about tilting back to make sure you hit that first melee. You can sprint, jump thrust, melee, switch weapons, reactivate sprint, press melee again, and hold forward on the left stick the entire time, and you'll get it down. So then the result is that you have a way to propel yourself forward and close the distance so you get that first melee faster and more consistently, making this technique more lethal and meaning that if you're good at it, you might be able to surprise some players. Check it out. For the third technique, we're going to check out this video. Who remembers the Halo 5 Super Slide, and who remembers this crazy clip by Campy using the Super Slide? Check it out. He's going to sprint and Super Slide and then headshot with the sniper. Man, I miss Campy. What the heck happened to Campy, man? Such a sick clip. Anyway, shout out to Campy. I'll have this video linked in the description below. You guys can check it out. It's a good trip down memory lane, and I highly recommend it. But the point of this was to check out the Super Slide. Now, the Super Slide is a technique that's been patched in Halo 5. They took it out of the game. It was kind of broken. It allowed you to launch your Spartan across the map if you perfectly timed a thrust slide jump at the top of a downward sloped ramp. So this is a perfect spot to do it. You would sprint, thrust slide at the very top of the downward slope ramp and jump, and you would fly across, and then you can get a headshot or do something nice out of the jump. And the reason why I brought it up is because even though the technique was patched, it actually still exists in the game, and not many people know about its existence, and nobody, to my knowledge, actually implements it into their gameplay. It's way harder to do now, but it still exists. Check this out. Big shout outs to Ethan Luculent. This is Ethan's video on YouTube. I'll have the video linked in the description below. This man is wild. He's got a bunch of crazy jumps using this technique. I highly recommend you guys check out his full video to see them all. We're going to look at a couple, starting with this one that everybody knows from one end of Plaza to the other. Check it out. And you just fly across, just like you used to. But like I said, it's more difficult to pull off and the requirements are strict. If you want to hit this jump, you need to line things up perfectly. The first step is to sprint and hit full sprint speed and then jump with sprint maintained forward. You want to let yourself hit the peak height in the jump and start descending before you thrust. You want to make sure that when you thrust, it's a downward thrust and you have a lot of downward momentum. The more downward momentum into the slide jump, the faster and the farther you're going to go. And you need to position that thrust perfectly. Notice how he times it so that the tail end of the thrust hits the very bottom of that ramp. Before making contact with the floor, he also reactivates sprint so that the moment he touches the floor, he slide jumps and flies across the gap. Now, because of the strict setup, it's difficult to find practical application of this technique at the moment. Imagine jumping in the air with your sprint maintained forward and trying to line up a thrust. People are just going to shoot you in the face. You'd have to do this when nobody's around and you have a large portion of the map you want to cross quickly. So maybe a starting strat, you can implement it into a starting strat. But here's a couple options from Luculent that he does that are pretty nice. Check these out. From this lookout point on the rig, sprint, jump with sprint maintained forward, times the thrust on that tiny downward ramp there, and then spring jump stabilize. You just cross the entire map in a couple seconds. Multiple spots on Plaza as well. This one's like off the roof, down into the floor, and then jumps off the car, and he's on top mid all of a sudden. So some crazy stuff. Go check out Luculent's video. You can see all these little clips here. He's got some incredible jumps, and he's constantly finding new ways to just break the game. So overall, between these three relatively secret techniques, the slide jump kneecap, the single hit Spartan charge, and the post-patch super slide, it's pretty clear there's still a ton of depth left to be explored in Halo 5's mechanics, and it's crazy, we're still finding stuff today. If the pros had known about the existence of these techniques while Halo 5 was still on the circuit, could that have changed the competitive landscape in any way? And now that we know them, does that push the meta further in the future? Is there an eventual 20HX that we could ever hit? We'll never know. Halo 5, unfortunately, isn't quite as popular these days as it used to be, but it's nice to see that potential, and it's nice to see that there's still depth left to be explored. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell beside the subscribe button. Keep in touch with everything the moment it comes out. I'll see you guys around soon.